Paul shows up and says, Jesus died on the cross for the forgiveness of sins and rose again. That's so simple. Yes, Paul was intentionally simple because he said, I will know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. As far as and now Paul knew more than that, and he did indeed teach more than that. But he says, the impression that I want you to have of me is this guy only ever talks about one thing. All he ever talks about is the crucifixion of Jesus. He's like, I don't really care what Marx and Hegel said. I don't really care about Aristotle and Plato and those guys. I don't even really care much about the great traditions of religious thinkers throughout the world. I don't know much about Islam, and I don't know much about Hinduism. You know what I do know? Jesus Christ and him crucified. I cannot stress this enough, friends, because there is this ongoing campaign now to try to get Christians just to loosen up and go with the flow. We can't do that. Because in the cross, we find the zenith, the pinnacle of everything Jesus came to do. I've got 4 points to throw out here quickly, and I'm already spending longer on this than I wanted to because it's hard to not talk about it. But what did Jesus came to do? 4 things. Number 1, he came to reveal righteousness to us. Jesus came to teach us what actual goodness and righteousness looked like. A big theme of Jesus' ministry was the rabbinic traditions in between the testaments got it all wrong. They completely missed the point. I will teach you what is right. Right? Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the pure in heart. Turn the other cheek. Don't be angry without a cause. All these things. Nowhere was the righteousness of God revealed more than in Jesus' death on the cross. If you want to know what Jesus is, I hate using the term because it has a certain meaning, but the ethic of Jesus was, it's the cross. It is the self-sacrifice for another. The sacrifice of an undeserving person, or for an undeserving person, demonstrating the ultimate love even to one's own death. That's what the cross is. We can talk about Jesus' moral teachings all we want, but Jesus lived it out to the uttermost. What else did Jesus come to do? Well, Jesus came to teach us true theology. He came to teach us what this is all about, all the big philosophical questions. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Why are we here? What's the point of life? What is God going to do about all this? Well, Jesus instructed us many ways in the workings of God and what God's plans were for humanity, but ultimately it was the cross that taught us. What is true theology? It is that God sent his Son Jesus to die in our place to provide atonement for the wrath of God against sin. That's what Jesus came to teach us, was grace and forgiveness and dying to yourself. All those statements Jesus made about dying to yourself, they're effective, but they don't have the same punch as they did after the crucifixion, did they? Because now all of a sudden when they say die to yourself, how can you say, I couldn't do that after he did it for you? Number 3, salvation. And I'm meaning this both narrowly and broadly here. Jesus came to help people. He came to help the outcast, to help the downtrodden, to heal the body, to cast out demons. Nobody came to Jesus and did not receive help, did they? Do we not find the ultimate healing, the ultimate act of kindness, the final work of compassion for all who believe in what Jesus did on the cross? To liberate us not just from the ailments of the body, but from the sin that corrupted the body in the first place. And number 4, so related to number 2, but number 2 I'm focusing more on the mechanics of what God has done. And number 4, I'm focusing more on the revelation of God's character. If you want to know what God is like, you look at Jesus. For he is the imprint of the invisible God. That's how we know what God is like. So many people are afraid of God the Father, and yet they love Jesus, which is a nonsense statement because Jesus Christ is incarnate God. God sent Jesus to show us what he was like. And where do we see the character of God better displayed than at the cross of Jesus, where the wrath of God against sin was poured out with its full horrific fury, and yet in that process it was God's love being demonstrated to bring us to himself by pouring out his wrath on his only Son for our sake. All 4 of these things are things that people want to take away, hold on to, and yet ignore the cross. They want to say, well, Jesus taught us how to live a good life, righteousness. Or Jesus taught us some interesting things about how the universe, how the world works. Or, Jesus was a helper. He came to help people. Or, number 4, Jesus came to show us what God is really like. But if you don't have the cross, you don't have the complete story. And in a sense, you don't have any of it. Whatever benefits you think you can gain from Jesus, if you leave out the cross, and I hasten to add, and it goes without saying, the empty tomb that came 3 days later, you're left with a pittance compared to the treasure that is revealed to us in the passion of Jesus. Certain people that claim to be Christians and are taking public stands for Christianity, yet they never have anything to say about the cross, or never have anything to say about love, or about the blood of Jesus. It's not just, a test to see if you're really one of us. It's, do you even understand what you're talking about? And if you do understand what you're talking about and you are deliberately choosing to leave out the cross in your proclamations, I don't have time for this. Whatever it is, it's not Christian. This is why when they saw Jesus setting his face toward Jerusalem and walking ahead of them all, leading the way to his own certain death, they were afraid. Because the cross is a fearfully serious thing. If that's real, then the weight of judgment over every single person is just about unbearable if you don't face the grace of God. But as the face of Jesus was set towards Calvary, so our face should be set towards Calvary. We never look away from the cross. There was a song that we used to sing back in Lynchburg, a worship song, and it was called Never Move On. It said, to the cross I will run, and I'll stay here and never move on. And back then, I was a young Bible college student. I thought I knew more than everybody else. And I thought to myself, you're supposed to move on from the cross. You're supposed to recognize that's the beginning, and then you move on to the tomb, and it's like, wow, what a dork I was, man. Like, it's not the point, is it? The point is, I'm never going to forget the cross. I'm never going to get over the fact that Jesus died for me. And if I ever wonder what God has done, and does he really love me, and does he really care, and is any of this true, I will run and look right back at that old rugged cross